Hey, everybody. It's December 20th. This is Tinderbox Meetup without this week, Michael Becker. I'm Mark Bernstein, the designer of Tinderbox. Winter is coming, but we have a few hours of non-winter left. But boy, is it suddenly cold out. Uh, so here we are, and I guess I'm host this week. Uh, so First, big news is that Tinderbox 11.5 is out. And I want to point out one thing which we haven't talked about much yet, if I can share. And there we go. 11.5 has a ton of interesting new stuff, much of which is important. But it also has a new color scheme called postmodern, a variant of modern, but this year's Pantone color of the year is white, or technically Cloud Dancer, but it's an off-white of all things. And in honor of that strange choice, we have a uh, very colorful color theme that is almost all shades of white. But Tinderbox is not particularly about appearance, but sometimes it's interesting to play with appearances. And one of our topics today will be Jacob Evans's work on adapting the Tinderbox text space to new and surprising ways. But first, do we have any new updates on the best practices project and or any new puzzlements?
I'm working on the file. I've actually returned to it. Nothing major updated. I'm working now on like the config note container. There's what are the best practices? And that's probably a Michael thing for the resources you want to store in a config container. It may relate to what Jacob's going to talk about today, that you can make changes within a note within the config container that then change other notes elsewhere in the document without necessarily relying on a stamp or something like that. So that's where my focus is this week.
Excellent. And do we have any new roadblocks, obstacles, confusions? Mark?
Oh, definitely not the latter, but hopefully I've unblocked something. So for those who are interested in LaTeX, I just put up something trying to answer Dominic Renaud's question about, basically how do I put my whole article out as a tinderbox thing. So if you're interested in LaTeX, go take a look. It'll be the most recent thread going. I wasn't proposing to go to it here, but it might just be useful for some of the people attending to take a look at. So thanks.
We talked a little bit about the color in the forum and how you could go about changing color schemes and so on. But in that, I suggested something about text, and I was a little bit puzzled by the response. Tinderbox is kind of conservative about how it makes changes to text. I couldn't use a config note to change text. Um, Readily to all the notes in a document. Say I wanted to, we have the standard font that you select for the document settings or the application settings. And if I wanted to change all the notes to a different font, I wouldn't necessarily be able to change all the existing notes. I would just change the ones that were new.
In practice, you probably could. Here's the problem. If you have a note with existing text, we assume that things like bold and italic and deliberate changes of font are things you wanted to do, and we leave them the way they are when you change, for example, the text font attribute. There is one exception here. If you change the text font from, let's say, Times Roman to Garamond, I suppose we should change to Calibri and
Yes.
like sympathy to the State Department. But if all of the notes that had the old text font exactly like the uh, the old text font will change to the new text font. So that will automatically do what you expect it to do most of the time. But if you have notes that have a different font, they'll be left untouched. It is possible that we are now too conservative, but messing up people's text, especially there was one situation where we got rid of people's bolds and italics, and that can be a real pain in the neck. Mark,
Yeah, just quickly, so I understand that is that, and so it's a change. One change that occurred really around the rebuild for version 6 onwards was the whole text handling thing changed for the better. But there was quite a vocal support for having essentially what looks like what you might call rich text, style text, in the text space, and that's what we have. So when you say the font changes, my understanding, one of the reasons, for instance, we moved on from loose to grand is it doesn't have an italic face, so you couldn't do italics in the text space because the way that italic and bold are done is it uses the bold and italic face of the font. So I was just wondering if I change a font, how does that affect a note that only uses the original text font but uses other faces of the font? Does that change, or is it only if there is more than one font in use in the
now it's
text?
not the number of fonts. For example, I'll suppose that you have a note where the text font is, let's again say, Times Roman, but we have a different font choice for italics. You hate Times Italic, and so you use, say, Helvetic Italic. Uh, you can do that. And in that case, if you change text font from Times to Baskerville, then the Times will change to Baskerville in this note, but the italics being in a different font will not change. They'll stay in Helvetica Italic. It's all just ways to try to do what you intend without being so eager to serve you that we end up messing up your text.
If we are talking about just a short question, because I stumbled about it today, I think it's very easy to answer for you. Where can I set the width of the document so that I get a soft wrap for the text?
The width of the document so that you
If
get
I have a node and the text is running very wide, I want a soft wrap of the text, and I have it in all my notes. But today I made a new one, and there is no wrapping of the text. It just goes out into the off.
you've got that you've got one of a couple of backstage builds, and you want to go ahead and get 11.5, and that will take care of the problem.
I installed 11.5, and that's, I think, with the new node, that's why I stumbled about it. I never had it before. My old no, files are all correct But with 11.5, I just created a new one today, and there the text is running off screen.
Okay, so if we have some text,
Yeah.
we resize the window, the text reflows.
Yeah.
There were a couple of weeks of backstage builds where instead of the text reflowing, the text would keep its current width and go off the screen until you deselected and reselected when it would rewrap, or until you click this. But this was just a backstage thing, and I mean, it doesn't happen in 11.5. I sure hope it doesn't happen in 11.5.
Oh, that's funny.
I think you might have accidentally opened the wrong version, which
No,
I did this
I
morning.
deleted it. I replaced it. But it's gone now. I'm just clicking on the same node, and now everything is like it should be. But I'm really sure that it happened today with a new file. I saw it this morning, and I was clicking around where can I set the width, and now it's gone. I reopened. So I don't know why, but the fix is there. And everything was in 11.5.
Okay. We'll keep an eye out for that one. Bruce.
While you were visiting, I downloaded 11.5. I tried exactly what you were describing. I played with the window back and forth, and it worked perfectly for me.
Same now with my file, but not this morning. Maybe it was too early for Tinderbox, and I don't know.
As one who's more than once written to Mark as a long and detailed message, I only said to get the answer, "Are you sure?" And then I restart the app, and it turns out the problem has gone away. Sometimes these things occur. My hunch is somehow a ruler has got set into the text that shouldn't have got set. That's basically set a very wide margin.
There's always format style reset margins should take care of anything like that.
The funny thing is, I was playing around with Gemini terminal interface, so I was reopening Tinderbox all the time, but now it's gone, so I'm happy.
Okay, one of those things. Great. Jacob, what do you have for us today?
Oh, so many things. Yeah, so there's been some interest in, kind of the work I've done, I think in two areas. One is with Markdown, and then I posted a concept a few weeks ago about kind of my working memory. So if y'all would like, I'd be happy to kind of give a demo of those two kind of implementations. So yeah, I'm happy to kind of share. Let me share my screen. And feel free. I tend to get going with these things, so just feel free to interrupt me. Like I'm not gonna look at the. I probably won't be looking at the chat or anything like that. So sorry, I got a permission thing here going on. Let me find the right desktop. All right. Can everyone see my Tinderbox here?
Yep.
All right. Great. Yeah. So this is the post where one of our community members noted gave a nod to Tinderbox. A lot of my work in Tinderbox, as it relates to text anyway, involves I write in Markdown. There's a couple of reasons for that. A lot of the exports that I do to HTML kind of start in Markdown. I'll get into that in a minute. I also am a heavy user of Pandoc. So a document like this that you're seeing here would maybe get converted into a PowerPoint or a Word document. So yeah, so Markdown in some respects is kind of a key component to my publishing workflow. And the other thing I'll demo if we have time is this kind of working memory sticky board, sticky note board that I posted about, like I said, a couple of weeks ago. So let's start with the Markdown stuff. Again, here's my kind of example Tinderbox. And by the way, I intend to share this Tinderbox. This is kind of a pared down demo, so I'll publish this to the forum hopefully today. And you all can kind of poke around at this and see how it works and that sort of thing. One quick caveat before I get going into the Markdown stuff that I want to point out. My Markdown implementation in Tinderbox is kind of an all or nothing affair. So we were just talking about formatting. Like in my implementation, if I were to use, say, Tinderbox's standard bold, rich text formatting or italic formatting, that'll get lost. And I'll show you why here in a minute. So I just want to caveat this. If you're using kind of my implementation of Markdown in Tinderbox, you're going to get those sort of weird results as we were noting. It is an all or nothing affair. So here is an example kind of Markdown document. Let me just go through a couple of things here. If I look here at the preview, I've got the previewing in HTML. We're using the GitHub. I didn't create this. We're using the GitHub CSS, which is freely available. There's a few different versions of it. It's in this Tinderbox, so if you want to look at the CSS, you can. But you'll notice that this note here is getting kind of nicely rendered in Markdown. Another thing here, I got a stamp that'll I gotta go to here. I got a stamp that will convert this to a docx, and that's what this looks like. So it uses kind of similar formatting and all that. I'd be happy to share my kind of styles definition for this, but yeah, very, very, very similar. Produces a pretty nice Word document. It can also be sent over to, let's even see if this works. I didn't test this morning, but I can also send this over to Google Docs. And I know many of you use Google Docs to share documents and stuff. And let's just see if this works. Uh-oh. Okay, we'll give it a minute. Yeah, so we have support for kind of all the standard Markdown styling. So if I wanted to create like an H3 here, H3, some paragraph text. I've got that. You can see it here in the preview. And you'll notice that as I was typing, it kind of does, the formatting, as we go. So let me actually pause there real quick. Does anybody have any questions about kind of how this is working? I'm going to get into the syntax highlighting, which is kind of how this works within Tinderbox. And Mark, full disclosure, we might stumble upon some feature requests of mine, so I'm going to apologize in advance.
So I'm a neophyte on Markdown. I know nothing about it.
I know. I've read some of your posts, Dave.
Yeah, and yeah, definitely an agnostic or hostile to it. But I'm confused because I see bold, I see italic.
Yeah.
And isn't that anathema to the whole Markdown philosophy that it's just supposed to be cuneiform, plain text?
Yeah, I don't really have a dog in that fight. Let me back up just a little bit. Let me back up a little bit. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Dave.
But how does it appear that way? I thought.
Yeah, I'm going to show. I'll show you here in just a minute. The one point I just wanted to make is my kind of Markdown editor of choice is IA Writer, and so the stylings that you see here are kind of stolen, cribbed from IA Writer. So the way this works, if we go into our hints container here and we look at the highlighters container, I have a Markdown syntax definition. So this is all of the definitions that produce this marked up, or this rich text kind of version of Markdown. Yeah, let me go through and just kind of explain how some of this works. So, like I said, this is kind of an all or nothing thing. So what we do is we actually reset the styling for the note that uses this syntax highlighter, which is Markdown. And by the way, let me just show you this real quick. This is defined in an attribute. This is syntax highlighting, and you just give it the name of the note that you're using that has the syntax highlighting definitions, and that's what this note is here. So we reset the stylings, and the reason we do this is because these stylings are applied incrementally throughout the document. They're applied in order. So if and it's really easy because of that to get to have things kind of go off the rails. Meaning we need to kind of reset the document's formatting before we apply bold and italic and link styles and that sort of thing. I don't know. Maybe Mark, you could add a little more color. That's at least my understanding of how
that's
highlighters
good.
are applied. Okay, very good. Yeah, so we reset this. One little feature request would be it would be nice if we could set the font in a syntax highlighting definition. So how the definition works is you provided a pattern. So we're saying, hey, syntax highlighter, look for this in the text. When you find it, apply these styles to the text. So again, we're resetting. So we're doing if anyone knows about regex, this is actual regex. We're saying everything in the document, dot star. Reset it. So we're setting the size, we're telling it not to bold, not to italic. So that kind of resets the document. And then when we get to a pattern, let me show it just a simple one. Here's a bold one, right? So if we get a line starting with a hash, followed by any number of hashes, a space, and then any other character, we bold it. And we set the size. Actually, I think my default size is it might be 18. I think I might have had this at a different size at one point, so I had a size definition. That works for bold. This is what bold looks like in Markdown. We match on it and we set it to bold. Same thing with italic. This is what italics look like in Markdown. We set the italic to yes. So on and so forth. So that's kind of how this works. I will just mention. I have found Claude, ChatGPT, Gemini to be really helpful when creating regular expressions. I don't know about all you that are probably programmers here, but I have a few rules committed to memory, but I very often need to go open the manual to figure out, okay, what do I need to do to, match on this kind of text? And I have found that Claude and ChatGPT and others are really helpful in helping craft regular expressions. Any questions about kind of how this syntax highlighting is working?
Not about how it works, but I just had a thought thinking,
Sure.
As Markdown is right at the end of the outline, if you have a note called Markdown, I'm wondering, Mark can correct me on this, does the highlighting only look at child notes of the highlighters container, or does it look at the whole? In other words, if you put a note right at the top saying Markdown, it would have no style information in it. So I'm just thinking that one thing that I would tend, this is why some of us tend to do this thing of putting prefixes. So you make these weird looking names to absolutely ensure that they're not to slightly unique. They really are unique. You're not going to make the name again by mistake. And as you're never really going to look at the note, it probably doesn't matter. I don't know if it comes out here, but if you did that and you found that suddenly all your styles disappeared, that's probably what caused it.
Yeah, so we could call this S Markdown.
Sure.
And then in my prototype here, I could just go in and change this to S, and our styling is going to get, they're going to get preserved. So that's how this is kind of knitted together. I do have a Markdown prototype. It specifies the syntax highlighting, and that's the syntax highlighting definition. Yeah, that's a good point. In fact, there would have been a conflict between these two names. They're not unique. I have a Markdown prototype and then a Markdown highlighter. Mark and then Dave.
Good thing to be anxious about, but in this case, it should not have any effect. The features that are controlled by notes in the hints folder actually look for /hints/ highlighter, and same thing for preview and taggers and the special and stamps. But it is true that prototypes can be anywhere. I originally expected prototypes to be anywhere, in fact. And prototypes don't have to be in the prototypes note, and prototypes can get confused if there are multiple notes that share their name. So prototypes and templates, this can be a confusion, but things in the hints folder you don't have to worry about.
Oh, that's great to know. Thank you, Mark. Dave?
Okay, so this may be a two-part question. The first is for what is the advantage in your this document that presumably you're focused on an output, an
Mm-hmm. Yep,
export product.
that's right.
What is the advantage within Tinderbox to write in Markdown? Is it because of the facility within Tinderbox itself to render Markdown as HTML or as something else? Or what makes Markdown advantageous to you in this context?
Yeah, for me, there's a few reasons. One is I've got a lot of muscle memory. I mean, this is not a great reason, but I got a lot of muscle memory around kind of Markdown, reading Markdown. I've been using it for probably at least 10 years to draft notes and documents and that sort of stuff. So, just from my perspective, that's really helpful. The other nice thing about Markdown, and I'm sure you've heard this, Dave, is that it's basically plain text. You're not styling anything. It's a plain text document, which makes it very portable across systems and tools and all that sort of stuff, which is really nice. Style text is somewhat portable as well, but not nearly as portable as just plain old text. So that's another reason. And then the other, as I kind of touched on, is that it's a key part of my kind of publishing workflow. I'll give you kind of another example. Like I could take this plain text Markdown syntaxified document that you're seeing here. I can plop it into email, and I have a shortcut that'll convert it into styled text for me. So in some respects, like it's easier to type hashes and exclamation or exclamation points, asterisks and stuff to style text than it is to go up to the menus or memorize the keyboard shortcuts and that sort of thing. So again, it's a little bit of muscle memory. It's a little bespoke to my or idiosyncratic of my personal publishing workflow. And then it's very portable. It's just plain text. Like I'm not, the styling is in the plain text as we kind of see here. Like this is a header. This is a italic bold. This is just a bold. That sort of thing. So again, it works for me. It's not, it's not for everyone, but for my kind of personal publishing workflow, I've kind of settled on just using Markdown for everything. Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, I want to push back on that a little bit. Uh, we've been using, for example, Command B for eons
Sure.
and eons. And in fact, Command B is more familiar to old folks than one or two asterisks, whichever it is. So I'm not sure that that argument, which you hear all the time, holds a lot of water. But what is true is that if your use of styles is mostly headings and bold and italic, which is all lots of people actually use in their text editor. There is an advantage in that it's much easier to write outside tools, like Pandoc, for example, or
Yeah.
these sorts of instant tools that Claude likes to whip together. If you ask it to look at these plain text documents and do statistics or find things, it
Hmm.
really likes to write these sort of little throwaway programs and run them. And that's much easier to do on the spur of the moment. Uh,
Yeah, no,
for Markdown than for really equally long-lasting and durable HTML or uh, what all this really is under the hood, which is attributed strings.
yeah. Yeah, no, you make a great point. In fact, it's funny. I have keyboard shortcuts that I've mapped to bold and italic and Markdown that are, Command B, Command I. So no, you're absolutely right. I think like for me, and again, this might just be my thing, but I've got other keyboard shortcuts to do some more advanced things. Like for instance, I can take the this is a keyboard maestro shortcut, but I can take the the URL in the tab that I uploaded, and this, this is this one here, and convert it into a Markdown link. Now, to do this, it will require a little bit of clicking and remembering, okay, well, what's this application's command for making a hyperlink, that sort of thing. So there are, like, it just, again, this might be this might be my thing, but there are some kind of nice advantages to Markdown. Like for me, in this particular instance, it's just creating like inline links. Like this is really handy. So this is an example of that.
So, but to achieve this, you've created this syntax highlighter, this highlighter
That's right. Yeah.
model, and then you click on preview. And what are you using within preview to get the rendered output?
So I'm using, yep. Yeah, go ahead, Dave. Yeah, that's a great question, Dave. So I'm using actually, and this is one of the wonderful things about Tinderbox, is you can give it any sort of Markdown command, any command that takes a Markdown file, plain text, and converts it to HTML. And I'm using the MMD command because it's got a couple of features that the built-in Common Mark and Markdown plain text to HTML processors don't have. So this is using MMD. You can install it using Homebrew. I'm not going to depend on that. But what that does is it just creates an HTML fragment here, and then we stitch it together using just regular good old Tinderbox templates. So this is using the HTML page and children template. You'll notice I've got, I have an includes here that includes kind of all my syntax, CSS and some JavaScript. And then it just calls the text of the document, which again is going to have which is the results of that MMD command or Common Mark or Markdown. And it's going to just write it out here. So there's nothing really up under the sleeves here when it comes to getting this into this or this export format.
So what is that preview container below or above highlighters in
above highlighters? Oh, I don't know what this is for, actually. Do you know what this is? I don't think I'm using this. I don't think I'm using this personally in this document. Okay. I don't think I'm using this. Yeah, go ahead.
So what that does is it does the style for preview mode, because Tinderbox is having to ride lots of horses here. So there are some people who said, I don't care about HTML. I don't know what it is. I just want to have stuff that looks like a nice web page. And essentially that's what preview mode does. So it styles up stuff and it's using CSS, and you can change the stuff in there. And there is a template also called preview, which means that without you having to add anything, if you just hit up preview and you want to look at your document in a sense in this web styled way, that's what you'll get. You'll get what's in the preview template styled by the CSS in that. I was thinking, and so linked to this is this confusion. It's okay, so why have we got plain text that's styled? The backstory to this is that if you don't sit alongside code much, Markdown may have passed you by completely, or as Mark said. It looks like a bit like working in a code IDE, and I think that's where it sprang from. So it's convenient for those for that reason. For a lot of people who are used to something that looks like this, Markdown went down a number of paths. So the same bit of Markdown can either be rendered as plain text. So if you've got asterisk, this is italic asterisk. It's saying when you output this to HTML, this sentence or this string is going to be in italic. Now some Markdown editors will then show you the rendered version of that. So you type asterisk, this is italic asterisk, and another pane will show you that text in italics. Some, and you see it in things like, and some of the things like Discord and Slack and things that I think sort of do this as well. I'm not particularly up on those, where they do both. So you see both the markup and the style. So what appears between the asterisk is styled as italic, but you still see the markup. And essentially that's what the style is doing here, if that makes sense. So it's doing what you see in the preview mode in a different way. And it does make sense to me because it's giving you a bit more semantic tailback when you're working in what is otherwise a plain text display. it'll be down to individual taste whether you like it or not. But hopefully that explains how these different things come together. Jacob, you mute.
Oh, so sorry. I was putting a finer point on kind of what you had mentioned. So this preview command is what's this text is getting piped into the preview command, which is then rendering this output. So it's actually very simple. Like it's taking the text, it's piping it through a command, and that's resulting in this, right? And again, you can use Common Mark. We have built-in Common Mark and Markdown that you can use here. I've got my own little thing. I'm happy to deep end on that if you'd like. But yeah, it's very simple. It's standard in, standard out, and this is what we get, in terms of HTML.
Right. So there's a export folder designated in Tinderbox, and somewhere there is a file that is created every time you do that.
Yeah, I'm not too sure. Let's look here. Yeah, no, that's a good point. I can't remember. Yeah, so this is getting just, I think it's using the internal storage for exporting. I don't have one specified, but yeah, that's effectively what's happening. That's exactly right. There's nothing kind of up under the sleeves that's weird happening or anything like that. Chuck.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on the illustration you had of pasting in the Google link, or pasting in an HTML link. When I first saw your example, I said, well, that's clever. Maybe that would be useful. And then I thought about it and said, but wait a minute, I can do the same thing with the rich text format.
You
and
totally
I see
could.
a formatted link. So again, I think there is a community, there's a difference in communities between the people who really just want to WYSIWYG, what I type is what I see, is what I get, and those people who are trying to work in an intermediate language like Markdown to produce a whole variety of different types of outputs. And I think that from what I see, the big advantage of Markdown is all the other Markdown processors that have come along in the last 10 years that allow you to do various things with Markdown, or even now so many of the AI agents that are almost prefer Markdown. So I think it's kind of we've gone down a path of creating an intermediate text formatting style, and this is no different from what I did 50 years ago with some the equivalent of runoff on an IBM 360-67. It's just you're using plain text and then telling the plain text how you want it presented, and then you've got another. In those days, it was a compiler that converted it. So we've been through this so many times in the industry, and with 50 years of experience, I look back on it and say, it's the same stuff over and over and over again, and we just keep doing this. And I guess the question I'd like to just sort of put out there, and I know there's no answer to it, is what is it that keeps motivating people to want to go almost backwards to a less rich textual environment and create an intermediate format, which then they run through other processors to get the desired pleasing output? So it's a philosophical question, and I don't mean to, I'm not asking you to answer it or anything else, but I do wonder sometimes if the reason this keeps happening is because the industry really kind of messed up when it came to dealing with WYSIWYG output. I mean, Word is a disaster, let's be honest.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Rich text could have been much better, but nobody made it better. So I sometimes think that Markdown is addressing the failure of WYSIWYG tools to actually do what people need them to do. And I don't know whether that's a true answer or not, but because this issue keeps cropping up in our community, I thought it's just worth putting it out there and saying, is the problem that we really need Markdown, or is the problem that the rich text formatting is too awkward or too limiting in what it does? For what you're doing with Markdown and what I see almost everybody else doing with Markdown, it's real hard to see an advantage one versus the other if all you're trying to do is just enter text and have it styled in a pleasing manner that emphasizes and enhances the message you're trying to portray. So
yeah, I mean, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I'm just saying I don't think there's any direct answer, but I think it's an issue we'll continue to keep crossing and encountering in our community and the rest of the world. And maybe we should all be thinking a little bit about, where does it make sense? Which side of this do we want to fall on? If our interests fall in the area of that is well served by Markdown, then that's going to probably drive you to go in that direction. If our interests are different, then we may not. And so rather than having arguments about it or contending that one way is right or the other way is not, I think it's just worth saying it all depends on what sphere you're working in and whether or not one approach or the other best serves what you're trying to achieve. And in that context, it's easy to see.
I mean, just for what it's worth, I'll just be real quick here. Like, I don't really have I feel like a philosophical dog in the fight. Like, for me, just because so many tools in my particular ecosystem use Markdown, it's easier to start with Markdown. And I'll just, as a quick example, like, if I take this text and copy it and paste it into our Tinderbox forum, this example link, because it's rich text, does not get rendered. But this link does, because again, this particular text editor in our forum expects Markdown. So, again, I just want my life easy. Like, moving text from here to here, and I want it to get rendered the same way or similarly,
Right. And that's a good illustration. I just thought it was worth trying to point out that this is
you make a good point.
This is not something that's going to be solved in our community. There's no resolution to this because of the way the industry has evolved. What we need to do is recognize that depending on the environment and the ecosystem you're working in is probably going to be the primary factors to which approach you take. And what is wonderful about Tinderbox is that it supports both. And I think that makes it a very unique and very wonderful tool. So
yeah, can't agree more, Chuck. Can't agree more. Andreas?
Yes, thank you. Just very, very briefly to say to Chuck, yours is a very good point from a sort of very deep computer science point of view. But for many of us who are just sort of users, the good thing about Markdown is that you can basically use it anywhere. I mean, I first stumbled across this when 20 years ago I wanted to use stuff I had written 30 years ago, and which was word perfect at the time. So some of you may remember that. And at that point, it was just completely hopeless. There were no converters. There was nothing like Pandoc. And so I just resolved that I needed to, in the future, use only formats that would be completely open that I could use anywhere. And so for me, the main advantage here is it doesn't matter where I start writing any sort of text. I can always sort of get it together and use it somewhere. So that's the main point. It's a very user-centric point of view. And I much agree with you, Chuck. There will never be an end to that because there is no best solution agreed by everyone.
Wynn, did you have a comment? I saw your hand up.
I was going to argue in favor of the sort of the Markdown approach, which I don't think there's any real controversy here. Or at the Chuck's point, just a nice thing about it is that it's relatively easy to build the tools for Markdown or some similar things that give you the visual appearance that's approximating how you would want to see it on a web page or in print, so you can get that flavor of it. But because it is text, other applications can deal with it, and also applications can generate it. Which of course the AIs are doing a lot, but they're not the only ones that do. And it's not proprietary, and it's very future-proof. Like, someone in 100 years finding our text files could figure it out. You can't do that with Word. Or FrameMaker. I've got old FrameMaker documents.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Yeah, I got Quark Express, which is, I don't know if it's still around these days. PageMaker, WordPerfect, like, yeah, and anyway, they're
Well, I mean,
probably
again,
lost to history in some respects.
yeah, I was not trying. I was really referring to not the proprietary standards. The proprietary standards have always had problems.
Yeah.
Hence my derogatory comment about Word. Even Microsoft can't figure out how that stuff works. And the reason, if people have forgotten, the reason that Microsoft doesn't really understand Word and had to completely redo it in XML and still didn't understand it, was that they bought the package, and the people who sold it off filtered away and flittered away, and as a result, nobody really understood how the rather convoluted mess that was the way that Word structured the internal documents was handled. So there are lots of problems with the proprietary formats, and I don't argue with that at all. And this comes back to my observation that I think to a certain extent the effort to try and deploy and utilize standardized WYSIWYG editing missed the mark. And I've always thought that was unfortunate.
Yeah, it is.
Pink was going to be the grand solution for people who remember what that was. IBM and Apple getting together, and they were going to solve it, and they both decided to walk in different directions, and it never got addressed. So it is what it is. And again, I was just making the point that there are going to be people who will choose one path or the other, and there should be no prejudicial interpretation of that. It's all a function of which ecosystem you're working in. And again, we've got a tool that deals with both. So we're uniquely equipped to handle that.
Agreed. Yeah. All right. Any other questions on the Markdown stuff? And then if y'all are interested, I can show you kind of my sticky note concept map that I posted about. It's very different than Markdown, though. It's very sort of thing. A Tinderbox. Yeah, go ahead, Chuck.
I was just going to say, have you shared this?
I'm going to, after we get off here.
Because I am really intrigued with a lot of things you're doing. It seems, very interesting, and you've taken some unique approaches, which I would love to analyze and figure out how I can leverage some of those as well. So thank you very much. It's
you're welcome.
Very intriguing.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'll post this demo box that I've got open here to the forums. All right. So I posted a little while ago about this. Oh dang, I lost the link. Well, anyway, about about kind of my working memory concept. I had one day I had like sticky notes kind of strewn all over my desk, and I'm like, there's got to be a better way. So I'm like, well, hey, I should try like building this thing in Tinderbox. And so what I did is I took my small pile of sticky notes and I started entering them in, in a Tinderbox map like this. And I'm like, well, it'd be great if I could take these notes and like give them a disposition. Like I send them somewhere else, like a task that I need to do, go to my task manager, something I need to talk to somebody about. It could go to an agenda, something I just want to get some more information on. Maybe we can like ask Claude to pull some stuff up. So yeah, let me just demo that here real quick. And then I doubt we're going to get into time to go over the implementation, but we can maybe get into it a little bit. So so say if I want to talk to Mark about, project series. And I want to, and maybe I got another note to, to just do some more research on Tinderbox. And maybe I've got another note that I want to, this happened, I met with the TBX community today. So I got a few notes here, and I've actually created some styles for these. So if I want to make this one red and make this one say like turquoise, we can do that. And they look pretty nice. And it's like any other Tinderbox map. I can move stuff around and all that. I have a couple of I think that it's kind of clever. I have a couple of like little widgets on here. I have a little adornment here that indicates how many unprocessed notes I have. And then I created an adornment that tells me the current weather. I actually work with teams internationally. Here in the US, we're on Fahrenheit. Everywhere else is in Celsius. And for whatever reason, I can't commit to memory the formula to convert Fahrenheit to Celsius, or I can't do it in my brain. So I like having the weather up. So, because oftentimes we still talk about the weather. I'm like, oh, yeah, it's like 5 degrees, when I'm talking to folks in Canada or Germany or somewhere in Asia. So anyway, I built this thing out. This just uses shortcuts to get the current weather, and we pump it into a styled adornment. So yeah, let me pause there real quick. Any kind of question? Oh, and then, let me just make one more point. And then I have these sort of drop zones that are around the edges here that allow me to set a particular disposition on this little sticky note that I've got. Does some things with it. So I'll go over that here in a minute. But yeah, any questions about this? Like, what's happening? It's a Tinderbox map. It's pretty nice. Okay. So say for instance, I want this to go into my task list. This talk to Mark about project series. I can just pump it on. I can drop it on there. It goes away. We actually archived it, so it goes into a little archive container that's a child of my working memory map here. You can actually see it in outline view. So yeah, I've got my archive here, and it moved that over to archive. So I've, oops, not what I wanted. No, that's right. Another feature request. I would like them to set the map somehow programmatically so it doesn't move around. But anyway, sorry about that, Mark. So yeah, if I open up OmniFocus here, which is my task manager, I'll show you. We've got a new note in my or a new task in my inbox. I've got a link back here in the note field to Tinderbox, and yep, there it is. So if I had notes in here and I wanted a reference, I've got that. And then I also actually set the URL of the note itself, the URL attribute. So if I wanted to go back into OmniFocus, I can jump back to it there. So that's kind of nice. I got kind of a two-way link on that. Yeah, any questions about this? Again, I don't know if we're going to have time to show the implementation details. I will just show you how real quickly we have an on-add action here. So I call a function that's to task inbox. It sends a reference to the note and a reference to the adornment, and it does all this kind of work behind the scenes to add it to my my OmniFocus inbox. I can also, this is kind of a neat one. I can also kind of ask Claude questions, and I wanted to tell me about Tinderbox. And what's neat about this is that, oops, that's some MCP approval stuff here. We set the I set a badge knowing that because it's still thinking, like it made a request to Claude, and it's going to probably come back, here in a minute or two and give us the response. So I set a little indicator saying, hey, we're still kind of waiting. And then when we get a response back, we set the badge to something else. And I'll show you how that works here in a minute. The one thing to note when this is running, I'm using the run command for the implementation here. It blocks kind of other things happening on the map. So when new items are added to the map, we set the prototype to sticky note, for instance. So if I do this, oh, it finished. So I couldn't demo that. Sorry. So yeah, let's look and see what Claude came up with Tinderbox. We asked it a question, and yeah, it came back with some text here. I asked it to cite its sources, but it actually did a web search. So to get that working, it does a couple of things. Again, I don't know if we're gonna have time to depend on this, but it calls this prompt when I drag a note onto this little drop zone, ask Claude, and it says, so this is the prompt I wrote. It says, tell me more about this concept or idea. It takes the name of the note, and yeah, I tell it, don't look at any Tinderbox files, anything like that. Don't use the MCP. And then I tell it, return commentary on the idea or concept. Do not include any preamble, which, some of these LLMs put a lot of preamble. So I don't want any of that. And yeah, this little prompt tends to produce kind of pretty consistent results. And I found this really helpful just in meetings. Like, oh, someone mentioned some concept that I don't really know about. I'll just make a little sticky, drag it onto my little Claude drop zone, and wait a minute or two, and it'll come back with something. It kind of keeps me in the meeting without like going over to the Claude app, typing some stuff in, reading it as it kind of prints out. So this is helpful for that. It's kind of a neat little thing. I can also take these stickies and just add them to the archive, which goes to that archive container. I also have various logs that I keep. So I have an example in this box here. So I drag it to log. It creates it puts the note, nicely formatted in my logs container by year, month, and then there's the log note itself, which is also really nice. So it kind of keeps my log organization intact. All right, I'll stop there. Do y'all have any questions about this? I'm happy to maybe show one of the implementations if we have time for that.
Yeah, I'm just why the color scheme. I saw three notes, three different colors. I didn't observe how they were set.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I kind of glossed over that. So this is, a yellow note. The default's yellow, so as I add other notes in here, it's going to stay yellow. But it's just a prototype. I just have a prototype design for the various colors. So if I wanted to change this to red, I can click the little prototype drop down and change it to red, and it just styles it using a prototype that's got the background set, the border set to red. Does that make sense? It's just a prototype that has these styles kind of predefined.
I just was wondering if you had a scheme. I mean, what?
Oh yeah. So it is kind of a nice scheme. Like, so if I change this to turquoise, I mean, they all kind of go together.
Semantic scheme. I mean,
a
red note is urgent. A yellow note is
yeah. So if it's something I need to do today, I often will make it red. No, that's a great question, Dave. Yeah, I'll make it. I mean, again, they're just colors, so you can give it whatever kind of scheme you want. Things I want to read, I often will make a green, and then things that I don't need to worry about, I'll normally make like gray, like just so it just kind of fades into the background a little bit. Yeah, that's mine. Like you could go to town and kind of create your own colors and schemes and stuff. But yeah, I absolutely do that. And that's actually why I have the colors, is so that I can give it some semantic meaning, as I'm kind of processing things.
Before we get too far down, this is a virtuoso performance. I mean, this I think is certainly equal to, perhaps superior to what Michael Becker does, but certainly in the visual aspects of it.
Yeah, I'm kind of a visual guy. So, in order for me to use software, it has to look good for me. And quite frankly, that's one of the reasons why I've done some work with the Markdown syntax highlighting stuff, is I just wanted it to look good as I was writing and taking notes in Tinderbox. Andreas.
Yeah, Jacob, just many thanks. Like you just said, I think it's aesthetically pleasing, and I think that's an important point for enjoying work and sort of lowering transaction costs and hurdles. And so this is why it appealed to me, and I'm grateful for you to present it. I'd love to learn from it. So if you could get into a little bit of the implementation, but mainly, if I understand, you are going to give us an early Christmas present by giving us a demo file. That's very kind, and I very much appreciate that, because it sounds like something I would just love to have on my desk, and I would probably implement it slightly differently, but I would like to learn from you and not have to reinvent the wheel. So it looks great, and I just was immediately attracted, and I'm very grateful that you're presenting this today. Just what I wanted to say.
Yeah, thank you. That's really encouraging. Let me give you just one quick. Oh, this is another kind of clever thing. I thought it was pretty clever. Using the on visit callback or prototype, or not prototype, sorry, attribute. We can actually do some clever things too. So for instance, if I wanted to see let's add actually a note to my idea log, make a competitor to Tinderbox, where I'm not actually going to do this, but say I had an idea too. I can add it to my idea log, and you'll notice that it's on my idea log here, which is just another map. But if I select this little thing, it actually switches back to my map. So we can actually create buttons in a map view to help us kind of navigate our Tinderbox. And I thought that was kind of fun. So I'm happy to kind of show the implementation of that. But before I do that, maybe what we could do is just, because this is one of the more complicated ones, I'll show you how this ask Claude is implemented. So again, it calls this ask Claude function. It passes it the note and the adornment. So in my library here, so if I go to hints, my code library, And I've implemented all these like little drop zone functions in a note called drop zones. I've got a ask Claude function. So it does a few things. It sets the flag that say, hey, we're going to be thinking. So it sets that little hourglass saying, hey, I'm going to call the Claude command. What it does is I have this function I'll show you here in a minute called prompt Claude, which takes the and then it uses kind of the export facilities in Tinderbox to export the note that I passed into this function using this template. So this is a template note here, and I showed you guys this earlier, but if you look at this LLM template, this is that actual note. And the cool thing about that is I can use things like export codes in it. So if I wanted to add some other attributes in my prompt that I'm going to send to Claude, I can do that right here. So one of the neat things about this is that it uses kind of Tinderbox native facilities to kind of knit all this together, which makes it, in my view, a little bit more maintainable and a little bit more flexible. So again, let's go back to our function here. I'm creating the string that I'm gonna send to Claude by kind of merging my note with that template. So I got now a prompt that I'm gonna prompt Claude with, and then if I go to prompt Claude, I have actually a Claude code library here. It is incredibly simple. It calls a command and gives it the text as standard in. So it's taking that prompt that I created, which again was a merging of this template and my note, and it's sending it off to this command, which actually I have defined in this config note. So let's just go look at that real quick. And this is my Claude command, and this is just calling Claude code. It's saying, hey, and we probably shouldn't do this. This was a different experiment, so we should probably take that out. But other than this, it's just saying, it's giving it specifying the model you want to use, and it's saying, hey, print this to standard out. Super simple command. If you got Claude installed, this will work. Claude code, that is. And after that gets called, going back here, again, to our drop zone note, all it does is it takes the text of the note. Hold on, I read the response. I wanted to make sure that we weren't overriding any text in that note. That would be bad. So it says, hey, if the text of the note is blank, go ahead and write the response we got from Claude here. And then, and otherwise we append it. So we take the text and we say, okay, go give me a couple of hard returns and then append the response, because I didn't want to overwrite something accidentally or that kind of thing. So this has some this kind of guards the text in the current node if it's set. And then yeah, it just removes that little hourglass saying, hey, we finished, and sets the robot. So I know that, hey, this is something I sent over to Claude, and I got a response back. It says the robot flag. So let me pause there. Do y'all have any questions about how this is kind of knitted together? I'm gonna just assume y'all followed me.
Yes, it's great. Thank you very much. It's very clever to have all these little things in the library. It's a brilliant example from which I've already learned something. Could you show us the OmniFocus one as well? Because
Sure. Yep.
Several of us may also use that.
Yeah, so this very similar. It just, so on the environment action, it calls this function to task inbox, which again is in my little drop zone file here. And what we do is I have a function called create OmniFocus task. So that's in my OmniFocus library here, and it just has one function in it. And what we do actually something very similar with AppleScript that we did with our Claude prompt. So I actually have a note in my AppleScripts container that calls some AppleScript called create OmniFocus task, but it also allows us to do some merging of data that I have in my note with this task. So let's go take a look at it. If I go to AppleScripts, I think I just have one in here, create OmniFocus task. So this is just a regular sort of plain old AppleScript, but you'll notice we've got some export code in here. Right. Yeah. So I'm taking and then this needs to be encoded because we want to escape like backslash or double quotes and things like that. So we're using the Tinderbox JSON encode function, and I'm taking the name of the note, And then I actually got another function that creates the URL of the note to a particular note. So we're actually calling a function here. So yeah, we're just telling OmniFocus, I create a new task in my inbox, set the name of it to the name of my my note, set the note of my task or of the task I just created to the URL. And then this just returns the URL of the newly created task. So I go back here, we return the link. And so my drop zone here, let's see here, I missed it. Okay, and yeah, you'll see it. So this Apple script will return the link to the OmniFocus task, and it sets the URL of the note to the link, and then we archive it. I have an archive function here that just moves that thing to the archive. So yeah, very, very, very similar to how the Claude kind of prompting works, where we have a template, and which in this case is AppleScript, and it gets kind of merged with the attributes of the note, and then gets ran using the OA script command, and yeah, we can take whatever it returns and do stuff with it. In this case, it's just returning a URL, and we set that to the URL of the note. Yeah. Mark, how long do we typically go? I can't remember.
Oh,
I
1:30.
can show stuff all day.
We've
All right.
got another 20 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Any other? Yeah, go
so
ahead.
that's plenty. Well, thanks again. It's for the not computer science guy that I am. It's just interesting to learn that I can understand it, but I would never be able to think it up myself. So thanks very much, Jacob. In terms of the prettification, can you tell us how you get the weather in there? Because I think that's very attractive. I very much agree with Mark Bernstein, who said that.
Yeah, let's we could just kind of deconstruct this here a little bit. This is calling an edict because I don't want to call it all that often. So what we do is I have a function actually that calls that calls current weather. I'll show you that here in a minute, which just returns a JSON payload. And then what we do is we set the subtitle to which is this right here. So we set the subtitle to the to the low and the high, and we did something else in here. Subtitle. Oh, this might be using a display expression. Let's look at that. This code probably needs some cleanup. And then in the display expression, we set the glyph that's returned by the JSON payload, and the temperature, and then I call this Fahrenheit to Celsius function that I wrote. So yeah, this is just using a display expression. What we're doing is when this edict gets called, we're setting the my dictionary attribute of this adornment. So if we actually go in and look at this, so you'll see this has got a dictionary in it. And then we just kind of parse out the dictionary. So I can set a display expression for the title. So I just say, hey, my dictionary, get the glyph, get the temperature, convert the temperature, and set it here. So and then again, I can go in and see how I've kind of styled my title text. I've set this color, I've set this size. This doesn't have like a border. I took the border off. It's transparent. So yeah, we're just using kind of the native Tinderbox stylings to style this. What's making this kind of work is that we've got a little function that calls I don't even know where I put it. Oh, it's in weather. Hey, how about that? Yeah, so we just run a little shortcut called weather conditions, which takes the current location and returns a thing. So I can show that here real quick. Let's see. Let's see. Trying to find it. Yeah. Yeah, so here you go. It's actually pretty simple. It doesn't do a whole lot. I'm happy to share the shortcut too. If I'm on my local Wi-Fi, it uses my location here. If I'm not, then it gets the current location. There's actually a bug in shortcuts that if you call this get location too many times, it'll start erroring out. So if I know I'm at home, it just uses my home location. Otherwise, it'll call this this current location, get weather for current location. And then all we do here is we get a couple of attributes out of the weather that gets returned by the shortcut here. This was a little tricky. I had to get a list of all of the weather conditions that might get returned this by this call here. Or actually, where is it? Sorry. Yeah, by one of these two calls here, like get current weather. And then I just went in and I actually asked, I think it was Claude, to give me example glyphs I could use. So these are or emoji in this case, like, so these are all the example glyphs for all the weather conditions. And then we just create a little dictionary that has the temperature, the condition, the glyph, which is just which comes out of here, the low, the high, the city, and then I return that, and then Tinderbox just parses the JSON that comes back and sets it in the adornment. It's pretty clever. I thought it was pretty clever. It's probably not that clever. I thought it was pretty clever. But you can do that. You can imagine you can create little widgets using the same sort of method for all kinds of things. Like if I wanted to write a shortcut that got the number of tasks in my OmniFocus inbox that I haven't processed, I could create an adornment for that. I mean, kind of the sky's the limit. If you're using shortcuts, if you're using any app that uses shortcuts, we can kind of knit it together with Tinderbox.
So, but how is Tinderbox getting the result of the shortcut? Where does that magic happen?
I'll show you real quick here. So in weather, we actually I have this run shortcut method. So I think it's probably my utils. I'll show you what it does. Run shortcut. Okay. So it calls the shortcut. There's a shortcut binary that's bundled with Mac OS. So we're running a command line. So we're saying shortcuts run and then the name of the shortcut. I actually logged some information here that we actually ran it. And then I have this run command, which does some tricky stuff on my system. You don't actually need this. But what it does is it runs the command, runs the shortcut, and just returns it. And in the string that gets returned, it's just a JSON payload. So, and then and again, this probably needs some cleanup, to be honest.
That's in the Tinderbox's run command facility.
That's right. That's right.
It'll get the response.
So we ask Tinderbox that response that it got back, we ask it to parse it as JSON and saying, okay, I got a JSON, and Tinderbox has a great way of converting a JSON payload to a dictionary. So we just set my dictionary to it, and then we pull out of that dictionary any sort of attributes we may want, like the low or the high or anything like that. I'll just mention there's probably a simpler way to do this because I run other shortcuts in my Tinderbox. I don't need all these sort of function calls just to do this. But I've kind of abstracted the common components into their own functions to make the code a little bit more maintainable for me. So Dave, for instance, I know you do some stuff with the weather in your Tinderboxes. I'd be happy to maybe send you a more kind of consolidated example of how you could do this, using shortcuts and Tinderbox. I know that this kind of multiple function call chaining thing is a little hard to follow.
Sure. Any way we can integrate shortcuts, Automator, AppleScript, getting data in and out of Tinderbox with other applications or services is worthwhile understanding. Certainly the weather is.
Yeah. No, I absolutely agree. And again, this is one of the wonderful things I like about Tinderbox is that it's very sort of flexible in what you can do with it. Like, it has its own AppleScript dictionary. You can have it run, action code. You can have it parse, things that are coming back from other applications. It's very, very flexible. And it took me a while. And just for what it's worth, I've been using Tinderbox since last September. So a little over a year. And it took me a while to kind of grok it. I'll be honest. Even as a computer scientist, technologist. But once you do, it's like, oh man, I can do lots of things with this thing. It's like a database, a notes app, I can write custom code that does stuff for me. It's really, really, really quite powerful. Yeah. Can't say enough good things. Thank you, Mark. Any other kind of questions? Again, I'm going to post this example Tinderbox to the forums.
Just to say again, Jacob, I'm very impressed. But if you're a computer scientist, well, then that's. But still, I mean, I've been doing work with Tinderbox for many years. I find it very useful, but this level of integration and of sort of having very specific tasks done, I find very impressive, and I will greatly enjoy, particularly now in the holiday season, to to waste my time trying to understand this. So thank you very much. It's very much appreciated that you share this.
Yeah. Well, thank you. That's very kind of you. Just one other thing. This is neither here nor there, but I used Obsidian for about 2 years for all my note taking and stuff. And it's kind of a Markdown text editor and has like plugins and stuff. And I will say, like, writing plugins for Obsidian, I don't really enjoy writing JavaScript. I don't enjoy writing AppleScript either, but JavaScript, and it's not nearly, like, for my purposes anyway, it's not nearly as extensible as something like Tinderbox. Tinderbox, in many respects, I believe, puts the programming kind of on the bottom shelf. The cookies are on the bottom shelf. It's very accessible. You don't have to set up some awkward, dev environment and do builds and runs and all that kind of stuff. It's very, its extensibility is really what kind of keeps me in the ecosystem, to be honest. It's just very, very, very flexible. Yeah. Unlike some of these other avant-garde, I would say, text editing, note taking tools like Obsidian, which I know many people love, and for good reason. But for me, being able to bend the tool to my will so easily is just very powerful. It's incredibly powerful and empowering.
There was a blog post somebody wrote recently, just last day or so. Making computers do things is fun. And,
it is,
and
yeah.
it is, and we've lost a lot of that. But I mean, it only appealed to a niche anyway, and I was among that niche once upon a time. But I think what I've discovered over the course of these many Zoom meetings is that there are perhaps like three, and I'm probably wrong about this, but I can see three distinct group Tinderbox users. There are. This is right up my alley, where I'm using Tinderbox to integrate a lot of information in my life and give it to me in a way that I find useful to me. Then there are people who are kind of academics that want to integrate a lot of information, do some analysis, and then publish something from it, which is not something I would ever be inclined to do. And then there are the people who do more detailed type of analysis type stuff, where the Gaudi view and the hyperbolic view and the analysis of these links and stuff is a facility that aids them in whatever their outcome is. So it's interesting that one application has such a broad range of applications, utilities, because I can't even get in the mind of some of these other applications. I'm not an academic. I will never be publishing anything in LaTeX. Is it LaTeX or LaTeX? It's an X.
I've heard it as LaTeX. I don't know. Maybe one of the Marks knows the right pronunciation.
And I have anxiety when I see everybody using Markdown. I'm like, what am I missing here? And I've concluded that I'm missing nothing, and therefore my life will go on. And it's likewise with integrating AI with Tinderbox, something I never would have foreseen, and don't foresee myself using either, frankly. But that's another perhaps fourth group. It's a Mark Bernstein, congratulations to you too. Just such a remarkable
Truly
application that appeals to a wide variety of different kinds of minds in a tool for thought.
I can't agree more. All right. Well, my offering to the demo gods apparently was accepted. I didn't have anything blow up on me, so I'm thankful for that. Thanks for having me, Mark. I'd love to join, more of these meetups as as time goes on.
This is great. It's fun to see how how things get used in ways that I've never imagined. Uh, especially that syntax highlighter as a
Yeah.
Markdown interpreter. That's fun. So that's a lot of fun, and we'll be looking forward to seeing the actual file and playing with it.
Yeah, me
So-
too. Yeah, Phil, I'm gonna probably try to write a little bit of documentation, particularly as it relates to how I've integrated this particular Tinderbox with other tools. Because you there's some there's a little bit of homework you need to do to set those up. So I'll make a point to add that, and then I'll publish it.
So thank you so much, and thanks everybody for coming in such a busy time. And we will see you next Sunday.
Well worth it.
See y'all. Thank you.
Yay.
Merry Christmas or whatever.
Thank you all and Merry
Yeah,
Christmas.
Happy holidays. Yeah.
See you.
See ya.
Take care, everyone.